I do encourage you to ask questions. So, bonsoir, salutations de Silicon Valley. You know, all week, I do speak a little bit of French. All week I've been telling people I'm speaking in Paris today, which gets their attention and a comment about how fortunate I am. And then I tell them, well, actually, it's from my house. I wish I were in my favorite European city right now. But here I am in my home office overlooking the San Francisco Bay. I just wanted to thank Pascal Corbel and Paris Saclay for this opportunity to share my view of Silicon Valley. So I look forward to the day I can be sitting there with what you see in front of you on the screen. So what is Silicon Valley? Well, it's a network, it's an ecosystem, it's an environment, it's a mindset that thrives on innovation. We think of it as the tech hub of the world with celebrities like Elon Musk, who is currently turning Twitter upside down, Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook. But what it's not is it's actually not one place. It's throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. It doesn't have much to do with Silicon these days, and it's definitely not a government planned situation as so many other places in Europe are. UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, is not terribly well known outside the world of science and medicine, but we actually started biotechnology by starting the company Genentech, which is now part of Roche. So we are a leader in science and medicine. We're the premier US Center for Life Sciences and Healthcare Innovation. Today, we're world ranked as a scientific and medical powerhouse that excels in basic research, medicine, and translating science into companies, which is where I play. We're not very well known outside these circles. Our sister school, University of California, Berkeley, which everybody has heard of, shares many programs with us. And just to let you know who I am, I run the Entrepreneurship program at UCSF. I come from the private sector, so while I've been at UCSF for a while, I think and act like I'm in a private sector company. And my mission is to start companies out of UCSF science and medicine. So what's in Silicon Valley culture? What makes it the #1 startup hub in the world? And you know, to understand the Valley, you actually need to go all the way back to 1849, which was the gold rush in California. People left their lives in other parts of the US to try their luck panning gold. They were joined by immigrants from South America and Asia. And these people were adventurers. They took enormous risks for the promise of wealth. An interesting little known fact is that the biggest profits of the gold rush didn't come from discovering gold. They were from the entrepreneurs who opened businesses catering to the newly arrived prospectors. Levi Strauss started by making jeans for miners, as an example. So there is a piece of our history. And then another very important piece is Stanford. Stanford University was formed a few decades after the gold rush by Governor Leland Stanford, who donated land. And his goal was to train liberal arts and engineering students. They played a unique role in the development of the Valley, encouraging students to commercialize their ideas. So think about that. Back in 1891, or a little bit after, Stanford was telling people, don't just stay in basic research, commercialize, start companies. Pretty amazing. So fast forward to the 1930s, and Hewlett-Packard was started by engineering students, Bill Hewlett and David Packard. So, you know, everybody's heard of the garage. We all have entrepreneurial ecosystem components called the garage, but this is where the concept started. They actually started Hewlett-Packard in this garage in Silicon Valley. And then the US government fueled Stanford's effort with funding for microelectronics and defense during World War II, giving it the first government contract in 1946. Stanford became the best prepared institution help on classified Cold War technology research, and the US government became their biggest customer. Again, students were urged to form companies rather than staying in the university. So one of the companies that emerged during this period, post-World War II, was Fairchild, which no longer exists. And it was started by 8 engineers, a semiconductor company, but it spawned companies like Intel and AMD. So it was directly or indirectly involved in the creation of dozens of corporations. And then fast forward a little bit more, and here's Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak testing the Apple I. We all know the story, but despite many ups and downs in Apple Computer, it really has transformed communications and technology. Another garage, the garage where Google started. Google was started by 2 Stanford grad students in 1995. It began as a research project of Larry Page, who was a Stanford computer science student, and there he met fellow student Sergey Brin. And this is a friend's garage he borrowed to work in. Facebook started really for real in this house. Of course, we all know Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard University, but in the summer of 2004, he decided he should move to Silicon Valley. So he moved out, spent the summer building a product with a team, making connections, getting investments, and hiring employees. And apparently watched a lot of Tom Cruise movies while he was in this house. So what's the combination of ingredients that make for a successful ecosystem? There's a network effect in the Valley. We have a critical mass of talent, investment, and infrastructure. And it's a magnet for entrepreneurs from throughout the world, building mass further mass on top of it. This is Stanford today. The mix of government, business, and academia is the fuel. And we have top research universities. This is Stanford, this is Berkeley, and this is UCSF. Research spins out ideas along with faculty, PhD students, and postdocs who want to start companies. Some will take operational roles in the new co, others will be advisors. There's a deep pool of highly trained talent, not just from academia, but also employees in large firms or former startups, consultants, lawyers, clinical research organizations, and other service providers who create the business infrastructure. You can find it all in the Valley. Need a good IP attorney? How about an expert on regulation? Someone to negotiate a partnership, an organization to run clinical trials? Whatever you need, it's here. Business conferences are very important for connections. You make connections through networking at these conferences, at accelerators, at events, at workshops and courses. The opportunities to connect are endless. And there's a collider effect. This is a random contact that you might meet at one of these events could result in a co-founder, a collaborator, a strategic alliance, or an investor. When I used to teach a class called Startup 101, the teams that we caused to form during this class often resulted in real companies, and the teammates became co-founders, or long-term mentors were attached to these companies. So accelerators are an important force for startups. Y Combinator, also known as YC, may be the most renowned accelerator in the world. It takes a 7% stake in startups for a $125,000 investment. This program is viewed as so valuable that there were recently 16,000 applicants, 16,000 for a 3-month cycle, of which YC selected 401 companies. Someone do that math, what that acceptance rate is, 401 on 16,000. Why is this so critical? Well, they get coaching from veteran founders on how to build a product, how to formulate a business plan, raising money. And then they have these demo days twice a year, and they're attended by 1,500 investors, which include virtually every VC in the Valley. Alumni startups have included Dropbox, Stripe, Airbnb, Coinbase, and DoorDash. They also have a biotech track, which is currently offering $500,000 for a longer program. So it's really quite an amazing way to get things started and moving. But there are also many other accelerators, and each one of them has a distinctive personality and deal terms. So often what we see is companies that start in our class might go into an accelerator as the next step and get that push they need to actually act like a real company and get some initial funding. This is Sand Hill Road, and those of you who know the Valley know that this is the place where our well-developed venture capital industry is pretty much located, although many have recently moved satellite offices to San Francisco because that's where people would prefer to live. This venture capital industry is flush with cash over the last few years. And why they're important is they provide money, sure, but they provide more than money. They have expertise, operational knowledge, and a tremendous Rolodex of contacts. This is the street where many offices exist, and it makes it really easy for an entrepreneur to sort of go from office to office and pitch multiple VCs very time effectively. Here's a snapshot of investment in biopharma, which is my specialty. Silicon Valley biopharma investment is in purple on this chart, and it has the most venture investment of any place in the United States. The appetite for biopharma startup investing is higher than ever before. And to go with that chart, these both come from Silicon Valley Bank. This chart compares deals by biopharma sector in the US and Europe. US investment in Q1 2022 is a multiple of Europe's in every part of the biopharma industry. And I'm going to pause here to see if anybody has some questions so far. And Neil, can you check the chat?
So far, I do not see any questions, Stephanie.
Oh, okay, please do put your questions in. We'd love to make this more interactive. Many VCs are creating companies themselves rather than investing in already structured newcos. This is a Boston and Silicon Valley firm, Third Rock, who in the past 12 years with this strategy has created 50 companies. It looks for emerging fields of science and medicine that may bring transformative change. And then they work with leading scientific founders and advisors. They launch the company themselves with technical, financial, and human resources. And the VCs who are partners and associates in the firm will take interim management positions. So this is a case where they are actually making the company happen. And it's viewed as a clearer path than taking the risk of an unknown management team. And we see this in more and more VCs. Third Rock does this pretty exclusively, this business model, but others have often will do a little bit of company creation and still look at the traditional VC model. So why do venture capital deals stay in Silicon Valley? There's always press that says, oh, Silicon Valley's losing it, people are moving out, venture capital's moving out. But I'm going to argue that VCs stay here. First of all, the industries they invest in are here. They can find technical employees in those industries and management talent. So tech and biotech, which I use for life sciences, are here, and they have a tremendous critical mass. They can monitor their investments without getting on an airplane. And this is really important. These VCs really don't like to have to fly across the country for a board meeting or to just check in with the CEO. They'd much rather get in their car in Silicon Valley, drive an hour, and sit in somebody's office close by, eyeball to eyeball. There's also a critical mass of venture capital firms here so that co-investment syndicates can form. And you find that the people, the Valley VCs, of course, all know each other, and they have a habit of investing with certain of other VCs, and it's all very convenient for them. Entrepreneurs can easily pitch their ideas to a number of VCs because they're close by. So you could do a great roadshow, never leaving the Valley. And then high potential entrepreneurs will move to the Valley. So it's not like, sure, there's some great deals in other parts of the world, great entrepreneurs, great companies. But if you want to raise money in Silicon Valley, you have to be in Silicon Valley. And that hasn't stopped entrepreneurs from coming here. In fact, many entrepreneurs are immigrants. So the VCs aren't leaving here anytime soon. So this is the backdrop for our discussion of culture. Now that we've seen a bit about the history, how the Valley got to where it is, and the funding environment today. So what makes our culture so special? I'm going to describe 7 factors that go into the mix. First, openness, and this takes 2 forms. We're accepting of anyone following the startup path, as long as they're motivated and honest. It's a meritocracy. You don't need a pedigree to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be from here. In fact, 51% of startup CEOs are immigrants. That's a huge number, 51%, think about that. Immigrants from all over the world. You don't have to know anyone to get started. If you're working on something worthy, you're going to be accepted. And we've seen so many people come here, I personally have, who say, well, I've been here for 2 weeks, and people sort of adopt them and show them around and give them connections. So it's a very open society. The second meaning of openness is open communication. We share ideas, and we expect that by sharing, we will benefit from other viewpoints and end up with something better. Maybe we'll find a co-founder or a collaborator or an advisor or an investor by talking about what we're doing. People who come from other parts of the world are really surprised by our openness. They always worry, isn't somebody going to steal your idea? How can you share it? But the fact is, it's a long road from idea to viable company. So just hearing an idea doesn't make a company. And we're willing to take whatever small risk that is, and for the benefit of the added value by sharing. Number 2, dream big. We dream big. We want to change the world. Incremental change just isn't interesting. Impact in a small geography leaves too much potential untapped. I used to teach in Russia, and when I talk to companies, people who are thinking of starting companies, they would often say, well, we could start in our city and maybe go 200 miles from the city to tap a bigger market. And I had to get into their mindset. No, think big. How about Europe? How about the world? It's not necessarily something that comes natively to people. We want to disrupt an industry. We want to save lives. We want to cure cancer. We want to edit bad genes out. We want impact. That's what we think in the Valley. Relationships. In the Silicon Valley world, relationships are everything. This is Dave Mcclure, who started 500 Startups, a well-known accelerator that's now global. This is his relationship map. And you can see the many lines he has to so many people. I don't know what my relationship map would look like. I'm sure not as dense as this by any stretch. But I spend, before COVID, I would spend most evenings networking at events, exchanging ideas and information and making new business contacts. It's the reason I can be effective in Silicon Valley. I really know pretty much everyone who's important in the life science world in Silicon Valley. It takes effort. I've made that over many years. This is one very powerful network comprised of PayPal's founders. As you can see from the chart, each of them has gone on to found other important companies and through that build a network. They're known, by the way, as the PayPal Mafia. And they've been a force for much good in the Valley. We have a can-do attitude. So our starting assumption is anything can be accomplished with enough hard work and determination. We look for ways to succeed and overcome barriers rather than finding excuses about why something failed. We're very positive here. And mentorship, the importance of paying it forward. You've heard the term payback. Instead, the Valley talks about paying it forward. In our startup world, this means helping without any expectation of payment, either today or in the future. We have 3 generations of entrepreneurs who mentor new startups gratis. Someone did it for them, and now this is their time to help the next cohort. In my entrepreneurship program, I have a list of over 100 mentors who volunteer their time for a class. No one gets paid. And some of them have become so interested in the team they're mentoring that they stick with them for literally years after the class is over and become an official advisor at some point. The Valley is just filled with mentors, serial entrepreneurs, investors, consultants, coaches. It's really a badge of honor to help a fledgling team. Right now, I'm mentoring a team at Stanford who's taking the course Lean Launchpad, which is a fairly well-known entrepreneurship course. And they're hardly typical students. They include a physician who's also an MBA, a PhD scientist who invented technology, and consultant for a major international strategy firm. They're all currently Stanford students in this class. And it's very stimulating to work with this team. They have so much experience. They don't know what I know, but they know many things I don't know. And that's the reason I and my colleagues like to mentor. We like to help, and we're stimulated by the kind of energy that comes from these young students. Another cultural fact, failure. Failure is a fact of startups, but unlike in many places, it's not embarrassing to have failed. In fact, failure might be viewed as a strength. You've tried, you've made mistakes, and you'll never make the same mistakes again. Now you have experience. I recall a conversation with a VC who had just funded a new company headed by a man who had failed in his last 2 CEO roles. And I said to him, really? What are you thinking? Fred failed. And his answer was, Fred learned a lot. He's not going to fail this time. That was such a surprise to me. But that is the way people think about it. Better to have an experienced CEO, even if he failed, than a complete novel CEO. Being an entrepreneur is a respected career choice here. I work with MDs who leave clinical practice to found a company. Occasionally, not that often, but occasionally faculty members leave UCSF to join a startup. We know startups have impact at scale that other professions don't offer. You can be a physician treating patients all day. How many patients are you going to reach in a month? Whereas if you start a company that integrates your ideas about how to help patient care, perhaps you can reach millions of people. That's a calculus that entrepreneurs use. With the millennial set, startups are trendy. So it's really a positive to be an entrepreneur. The entrepreneurial spirit's in the air here. You'll feel it if you come here. It seems everyone is doing a startup, or they've done one in the past, or they're thinking about doing one. We start 7th graders on entrepreneurship classes. This is a picture of a Berkeley-run business academy where kids create and run a business in 2 weeks, guided by professors, mentors, and entrepreneurs. I once mentored a 10-year-old and his 12-year-old brother in an undergraduate Stanford class. Of course, both their parents were entrepreneurs. The kids gave an awesome final pitch, and it was hard to remember they were only 10 and 12. So I'm going to pause here for a minute and just see if anyone has questions.
We have a couple of questions. Pascal, you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I was wondering if Genentech plays the same role today as Fairchild played earlier for the semiconductor industry.
So certainly companies spin out of Genentech, if that's what you're asking. There are, from all the major companies here in the Valley, like Genentech, Gilead, BioMarin, eventually there are some people who want, they don't really enjoy the big company environment so much. They have ideas and they've seen how it's done in a big company, but they think they can do it better in a small company. So yes, companies do start out of Genentech and others. But what was so unique in 1976 when Genentech started with a UCSF professor and maybe the first venture capitalist or an early venture capitalist, there weren't companies around. And there, maybe, well, Apple started in 1977. Life science was never quite as quick as tech to get things going. So it was quite unique. But yes, it continues, and that's why this critical mass keeps happening. It feeds on itself. A company is small, it gets big, people leave and start another small company. Good. Thanks for the question.
Elma, you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, sure, thanks. I'm wondering about relationships and the map you showed us with so many links, how do you maintain relationships with so many people? What type of relationship can you have with so many people?
Well, of course, it's not a deep relationship. It's not like having your best friend. That would be impossible. So how do you do it? Well, I'm going to talk about pre-COVID because it's harder now. Pre-COVID, going out to these events and conferences and so on, and basically spending your time networking is a great way to do it because you see so many people in one place and it's very efficient. And these random conversations that you can have at a cocktail party at a conference might just be the most valuable thing of your 5 days at the conference. There's also a very large, or has been a very large conference here in San Francisco, sponsored by the investment bank JP Morgan. And it is the world's biggest life sciences healthcare conference. So these Wall Street bankers bring in companies that they think are interesting, mainly public companies, to speak. But that's not what we do because that's not going to help us. So what we do is we spend the days that the conference is going on in San Francisco at all these networking events. There are so many cocktail parties. You can get lists of them. There could be 15 cocktail parties a night for 3 nights. And of course, kind of impossible to make them all. But once you've been doing it for a while, oh, this is a good one, or this is the one that's going to have investors, or that one's all lawyers, we can forget that, or whatever. So there's a huge networking that goes on. And then there are these side conferences that are not the JP Morgan main conference, but they're more focused on earlier stage companies, not already public. So we go to those too. And if you're a company wanting to get investment, you can pay to get a spot to pitch at one of those conferences and get in front of hopefully a lot of people, not always. So that's one major event. I went for 28 years. 28 years. I went to JP Morgan and spent, endless nights doing this networking thing and days. And only with COVID have I stopped. So hopefully things will get back to the pre-COVID norm, and we'll be back into intensive networking again. I don't know if that did that answer your question at all?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you have to like people to do this. And not, I work with a lot of scientists who are really shy, and they're much happier being in the lab, and they don't really want to go out and talk to a bunch of business people. I'm a business person. It's easy for me. I love doing deals, and I did business development before I started doing this. So to me, it's energetic. I love the energy from learning about other people and what they're doing. For scientists, they need training. They need,
for sure.
Just by any chance, or Thelma, are you a scientist?
No, not at all. I'm studying at Saclay in entrepreneurship at Pascal's diploma, like master's degree.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good. Yeah. So if you're already studying entrepreneurship, you probably are an outgoing personality.
Yeah, somehow I am, for sure.
That's good. Yeah. Great. I see Pascal laughing. Any other questions? Anything else in the chat, or you can raise your hand too. That works if I can see it on my screen. Anil, anything else, or should I keep going? Keep going?
No, those were the only two questions.
Okay. All right. Please put your questions into chat. We definitely will have time to talk to people. Okay. So back to Silicon Valley. Serial entrepreneurs are ubiquitous here. These people literally don't know how to stop once they've exited their startup. Like, how else do you get the adrenaline that you get from being in a startup? And for them, it's not about the money. So you can see people who are extremely wealthy because they had a great exit and they just want to keep going. It's about the challenge. It's about the impact. It's about being with interesting people and making something happen. So in my classes, I have many serial entrepreneurs who are mentors, who just love this stuff and don't want to be away from it. And government's role here is pretty benign. So federal government provides grants to help new companies start. They're called Small Business Innovation Research Grants, and it's a great way to get something going from, for instance, out of my class, my Startup 101 class, a number of people got Small Business Innovation Research Grants, and then they had a few $100,000 to get to a proof of concept. But once that's over, you don't see the government around very much. And state government, the state of California, has decided we don't need help. After all, we're Silicon Valley. And so why would we need money? And the fact is, before the last couple of years, life science companies really needed money. It's not like being in tech. There just weren't a lot of sources for them. But the state, unlike, say, New York State, which has made funding available, the state doesn't help. So basically, they stay out of daily life at this startup stage. But the beauty is, you can set up a company in California for about $85, and it takes only 30 minutes online, and you've got a company. Now, an LLC, legal liability corporation, isn't the format that the lawyers want you to be in if you're going for venture capital, but it's a start. So the idea is government stays out of the way. So how important is the environment? The environment that we have here that I've just described. I stopped my neighbor in the street on Friday. He's a French scientist who left Paris for UC Berkeley and recently started a company in the Valley. And I asked him, what are the differences between here and France? And he went on about, in France, you can never fire an underperforming employee, and how making money is seen as dirty. And you can't get funding to get started until you've got proof of concept. But by then it's too late and you've lost your innovative edge. Someone else has already done this. So I listened for a while and I asked the key question, would you have started this company if you were still in Paris? And his answer was an emphatic, no way. And there are clearly differences between our two environments. I spoke to another French entrepreneur who had been postdocing at Stanford and started a company. And when she went back to France, she said she cried on the airplane and she knew she had to go back for business reasons. But she knew how much she was going to miss the can-do positive attitude here in the Valley. So I just wanted to understand a bit about the environment you all are in, and hopefully that gives you some perspective. Over the last few years, biotech funding has taken off in an unprecedented manner. Series A venture rounds that used to raise $10 to $20 million today may raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And I've chosen a few outstanding life sciences examples to share. Icon Therapeutics has 4 founders. 2 of them were at CRNS in Paris and others were in the US. The company started in Silicon Valley with a drug discovery platform that evolved from super resolution microscopy, a groundbreaking approach to elucidating the behavior of proteins in live cells. At the time of their first financing, they had no proof of concept that the technology worked. Despite this, they raised $148 million in their Series A in 2021, and that was followed by a $518 million Series B that you see here. That was only 8 months later. How could they do this? Well, you only have to look at the founders, who include a Nobel laureate and the president of a prestigious Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and some groundbreaking technology. Investors thought this was going to be a good risk, and we'll see, it's early. But think of the amount of money. Here's a second example, Sana Biotechnology. They're developing platforms to repair and control genes in cells or replace any cell in the body. So think gene and cell therapy, hot topic today. They raised $700 million in a Series A in 2020, 700 million Series A. And then they went public. And now their market capitalization is $1.5 billion, which by the way is way down from when they went public, down by billions. And all of their research is still preclinical, meaning there's no proof of concept in man. So another amazing. Somebody please mute. I can hear some background noise. Okay, this is my third example, maybe the most interesting in some ways. This is the newest high-profile startup, Altos Labs. Its business is described by this headline, Meet Altos Labs, Silicon Valley's latest wild bet on living forever. And there's a trend to aging startups, which I attribute to the fact that the VCs are aging, but that's just my own read. That's not based on data. Altos has an all-star team of industry heavyweights and investors that include Jeff Bezos and Yuri Milner, the Russian billionaire. It launched with this mind-boggling $3 billion in venture funding. And we've had some people from UCSF leave faculty positions to go and join this so-called startup. So 3 important examples. Not everybody's example, but these things do happen. So what's next in the Valley? Here are some of the trends we see. The only thing that's for sure is the Valley will continue to innovate and be a world center for entrepreneurship. If you ever see an article that claims Silicon Valley has lost its mojo, it's fake news. Silicon Valley has been tried to be copied by companies and by countries all over the world, and it doesn't quite work. So sure, you can try to be more open, and you can try to have accelerators and all these different elements, but the way Silicon Valley, with the many years of history that we talked about and the critical mass we have, you just can't copy it. The good news is we invite you all to come here and be part of this amazing ecosystem. I want to tell you about this amazing course that I started during COVID. And Neil, if you would put in the chat a link to getting information on the course, I would appreciate it. If you wanted a taste of Silicon Valley in this deep tech world, focused on life sciences and healthcare, you should consider joining my virtual global class this fall. This will be the 4th cohort that we've run, and we now have over 300 alumni in 25 countries and 6 continents. And in fact, I think at least one of our alums is on this Zoom. You will absorb the Silicon Valley mindset through guest lecturers and mentors who come from the Valley. They're the practitioners. This is not a theoretical course. These are people who will teach the elements of actually starting a scientific or medically based company. This class is 10 weeks long. 50% of the lectures are on CET. All are recorded, so you can always go back and watch the ones you didn't feel like staying up too late for. Your cohort is professionals with an interest in the startup world, and they can be faculty, entrepreneurs, scientists, physicians, tech transfer people, ecosystem heads, government, corporate managers, and people like, to Pascal's earlier comment, people sitting in large corporations who don't want to be there and would be interested in starting a company, or anyone else who's interested in innovation. You will join an alumni group of an incredibly diverse set of skills and interests. And it's really an amazing class. We have small groups led by some of these serial entrepreneur mentors and also investors who are mentors. So there's huge value. So please do let me know if you're interested. My email address is here. And if you have questions, and I think Anil is putting in the chat a link for updates on the class. So hope to see some of you there. And I don't know, Suzanne, are you still on this Zoom? If you are, maybe you can unmute and just say something about it.
Yes, excuse me, I have a little bit like the COVID voice. I'm the bespoke alumni here on the Zoom tonight. So yes, I was part of the 2nd cohort Stephanie was teaching. And it was, at least for me, it was a very inspiring course, given also I was probably part of those people she pointed out to being in larger corporations and looking for maybe also a personal exit. And I found my exit, or I found maybe also the courage of exiting in order to join a small startup, because I felt the cohort provided me, I think, with a cohort of people that were like looking forward to do something new and yeah, something exciting. We do not know if we will achieve getting our new drug onto the market, but we believe in it, and obviously we're looking for lots of support. So if somebody wants to hear about what we are doing and why we need to support our development, yes. But again, for me as a single person, it was very inspiring, connecting also with the cohorts. We have still group meetings where we connect with other cohorts and hear about problems or other entrepreneurs have, and we point out maybe the right directions or not right directions. We do not know sometimes, but it's all about the connectivity. And also to the question earlier, this is a great opportunity to build this network. I have never put mine yet on any map, and I'm probably far from that, but that could be a good start. Also diving into that really global network of people, and then you can become an alumni and show up again on classes. Stephanie is giving.
Thank you,
And
Suzanne.
plea
Great.
and plea for funding. I'm not going there.
I didn't know Suzanne was going to be here, so we obviously haven't haven't practiced any of this. This is what she really thinks, and
Spontaneous.
I felt confident calling on her because everybody comes away from this course with some amazing story. And in our last alumni meetup, so many people had changed what they were doing when they first took the course as a result of the course. And people would say things like, "This has changed my life." And it's like, wow, I'm so glad. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. I would love to open this to Q&A. I see some things in the chat. Let me see if I can. So, just feel free to raise your hand. Don't even have to go into the chat, or put it in the chat if you like. Izara, thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So you mentioned the difference between the American and French system. So what are your tips to improve the French entrepreneurial system?
Oh my, that's asking a lot. I don't know your system that well. I actually spoke to 3 people in trying to understand the French system in the last couple of weeks. And so I know from them, and if we have time, I might call on one of them to speak who's here. But, I'm gonna pass on your question because I can't give you a good answer. I'm sure, you can go back and look at some of the elements that I spoke about of the culture and just think through, well, what do we have here in France? And what are we missing? And, everyone has some elements of culture. I remember speaking to entrepreneurs in Morocco, and they were saying, well, what can we do? And I said, well, I don't know, don't you have pretty good, strong family systems? Like you're very close to your family? They said, yeah. And I said, okay, well, that's a network. And use that trust that you have in that network and build from there. So you can take these elements and see how they might apply to you. Now, I know France is doing better than it had done, or at least that's what I've heard from people. So some things are going well. And I also know you have a big election coming up, so it'll be interesting to see what happens to entrepreneurship in that context. Anita, did you want to say something? You're muted.
No, it's okay.
Anita?
So
Anita, you're still muted.
Okay. Thanks, Stephanie. We know each other from West Coast, so at least by Zoom. What you said is totally correct. However, I am French, and I had worked in France, and I had worked in US. I had worked in large company in US, and I had worked in small startups. And I tried to create myself a company. So, because when you are here, you're always thinking about how I can start a company, or at least you are meeting always in the Bay Area, people that they want to start something. So this is the change of the mentality from Europe to here, because often people, they are looking what's new, what's starting. That's the mentality set. I have to say that recently, because I am working a lot with the France and with the French Consular for the NETFA program, I had just realized that we are making a lot of effort on starting startups. However, the financing is not following right now. And as you presented Icon, that's true, 580 million for a Series A. However, always it is the same people that they know each other. Sometimes you're having a very good, so the relationship and networking is very important. Something that I had no idea when I was living in France. And when I started to live in US and they were talking about networking, it was, what's networking? And little by little, I came to recognize what's the value of networking and how is it functioning here. So thank you for giving this information. So as a expat from France, I can say that what you're presenting is totally true. There is this mindset and here, and I know that in France, we are doing a lot of effort right now because, as I said, I am part of the NETVA. I started the NETVA in the Bay Area, and I know that there is this, how can I say, there is this drive to emulate some of the entrepreneurship mindset in US. And thank you.
Thank you for the perspective. Zhang Yung, and I don't know if you're still there, Zhang Yung, who runs the entrepreneurship program at Pasteur, who wonder if you would share your perspectives on what you heard and whether it seems to fit with your impressions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Really give this opportunity. I can present our new master program. It is not easy to learn the startup. Also, maybe I need to present myself first.
Well, we don't have time to have you present the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I'm
heard...
working in the Institute Pasteur, the Startup Awareness Office. I'm learning. Our office providing entrepreneurship or other training for motivated researchers. As you see, all the researchers difficult really entering to the startups because many facts. So it's very interesting to enter, but it's very afraid to start.
Yeah.
So many facts, and then also they like so much science, and then that's why they started science. So, and then when they go there, and then they feel kind of cheating, they go some other part. No, I mean, two things in the inside, inside the mind, probably.
Yeah, you know, I've seen people come into my class feeling sort of like that, very afraid, no idea what this was all about, didn't understand the language of business. And in 10 weeks, sort of amazingly, they come out and they speak like business and they understand now all the issues of starting a company. And when they're approached by an investor, they know what to ask, they know how to vet them. So it really being in a group like that really seems to help a lot. So, and I have to thank Pasteur for being an early partner with us as I was getting this course started in 2020. Any other, sorry.
Definitely, that's why my office job is aware to them, it's motivate them. It's not to push them to start create a startup. That's why we also create management program, especially in the life science and health, because life science and health is difficult and then different field than others. Even 10 years you learn the startup, sometimes you don't have your product, but sometimes you sell your startup without product. This is very strange and a very different type of startup. And we think we know very well different. About very. So and then we need to learn a lot regulation, clinical research, and then many things take care of. Also depends on your stage, you need to also change your strategy of your company because you are not even the product, but you need still the money invested and you need to get.
Yeah. So okay, we need to stop here. Thank you for your comments. And we're just about out of time. Pascal, do you want to say a few words?
Yes,
speak of networking.
Very few words. Indeed, just thank you very much, Stephanie. It was very interesting. I think the just give us a little smell of California and Silicon Valley. So thanks very much, and I hope we'll have other partnerships like that.
Excellent. Pascal, thank you. Pascal and I met networking at UC Berkeley only a month or so ago, and didn't know him at all before. And look what a great thing he's done, is to assemble all these people and give me a chance to speak about Silicon Valley. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Is there something else in the chat? Okay. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And you've got my email if you would like to follow up in any way. And I wish you a good rest of the evening.
Yeah.
I'll stay on for